Ladies and gentlemen of the media, good morning. Let me welcome you to this weekly press conference, People's Progressive Party press conference. This morning we have our General Secretary, Mr. Parliamentary, with, as usual, read the statements and we'll take the questions afterwards.
Morning, everyone. The People's Progressive Party will not participate in the National Assembly on Thursday, June 24th, to debate the speech delivered by David Granger, President of the de facto administration. The PPP views this debate as a charade by the GCOP-engineered parliamentary majority to lend legitimacy to its creation and to help foster an ambiance of cooperation in Parliament at a time when PPP leaders, members and supporters are under daily attack and made to suffer deprivation of their basic human, political and civil rights. The PPP would be the first to concede that while it formed the government between October 1992 and May 2015, debates on presidential speeches inaugurating Parliament did take place in the National Assembly. This time, however, this debate will be taking place against the backdrop of a GCOM rigged elections and the composition of a Parliament that does not reflect the will of the Guyanese electorate. In any event, a cursory perusal of Granger's speech, slated for debate, would show that it is replete with platitudes and backsliding on AFC, APNU election campaign promises that makes the Commingsburg Accord look like a tattered and useless document. Moreover, while the speech makes reference to constitutional reform, no mention is made of the commitment to reduce the powers of the President nor the Executive, a matter which the coalition's Prime Minister had insisted he would make a priority on the coalition's assumption to office. This must be a slap in the face of the coalition Prime Minister. Further, there is absolutely no indication in respect of the way forward as regards crafting of the so-called quote-unquote poverty reduction plan, nor the quote-unquote national economic strategy. In his address, one finds a very fascinating study of what Granger is now saying he will deliver to the Guyanese people compared to what he promised the Guyanese people when he was trying to persuade them to vote for him. Let us examine a few examples. Firstly, Granger made a fascinating statement in his speech that his government, quote, shall ensure that there will be no increases in income tax rates, value-added tax, or national insurance contributions for this financial year. End of quote. What is particularly fascinating about this statement is that mere weeks earlier, when his coalition was trying to convince the Guyanese people to vote for them, they promised Guyanese that within the first 100 days of being in office, a coalition government will, quote, immediately implement a phase reduction of VAT and the removal of VAT from food and other essential items, end of quote. 37 of the 100 days have gone by, and the 100 days will expire on 24th of August 2015. Note, the promise was not to study the VAT, nor to examine it, nor to assess it, but to determine whether the reduction was affordable, to assess whether additional items could be zero-rated, or to consult on which other essential items should be zero-rated. The promise was to immediately implement a reduction in the rate and remove VAT from food and other essential items. That was the promise by the APNU AFC. For the President to now make an about turn from what was promised and now declare in a speech that there will be no increase in the rate is worse than an about-turn. It is nothing short of backpedaling on an important promise made to the Guyanese people. It is a betrayal of trust and a violation of the contract between the APNU, AFC, and the Guyanese electorate. Note further that the promise to reduce the VAT rate and extend the list of zero-rated items was the third highest priority in the promises for the first 100 days. The highest priority promise in the APNU-AFC manifesto for the first 100 days was the reduction in the Berbice Bridge toll. Miraculously, this promised reduction was not mentioned anywhere at all in Granger's speech. In fact, the county Berbice was not mentioned a single time in the speech, nor was any mention made about the Berbice Bridge toll reduction. It did not appear within 100 miles of his speech. Indeed, that promise seemed to have vanished into thin air. One wonders what is holding the coalition back from delivering on this promise. And why was the president so silent in his speech on when this promise will be honored? Once again, the coalition did not promise to study the viability of a toll reduction, nor to examine whether a reduction is affordable, or to consult on the desirability and appropriateness of reduction. The coalition promised an immediate reduction in the Berbice Bridge toll. A mere 37 days after the assumed office, the coalition has already kicked Berbicians aside and abandoned their promise of delivering an immediate reduction in the toll to them. The second priority in the APNU-AFC manifesto was, quote, significant increased salaries for government workers, including nurses, teachers, in the primary, secondary, and tertiary education, security personnel, and civil servants under traditional payroll, end of quote. Indeed, in addition to this promise, for the first 100 days elsewhere in the coalition manifesto, two other statements on salary increases can be found. First, we were told that the coalition would award, quote, 10% increase in public sector wage, salaries, and emoluments, and thereafter consult with the unions on the method of allocation of increases on the wage scales, end of quote. Secondly, we were told that, quote, as a prelude to the restoration of collective bargaining throughout the public service, increases in salaries for all government workers will proceed on a graduated basis, with the lowest paid receiving a 10% rise, end of quote. These were all definitive statements with only one possible interpretation, and that is that within the first 100 days of the coalition's assumption to office, all government workers will get a significant salary increase, the most significant being at least 10%. There could be no other possible interpretation of the manifesto promise. Miraculously, by the time the coalition assumed the presidency and went to Parliament, a different tune was heard, to the effect that, quote, there will be moderate increases, however, in salaries to be paid to public servants, end of quote. Just like the Berbicians, it appears that the working people of Guyana were also tossed aside and cheated of their vote with a false promise that is already being reversed by the coalition. Astonishingly, the president, who is himself a senior citizen, appears to want to cheat the elderly. When he went to them and asked them for their vote, his fourth highest manifesto priority for the first 100 days was to grant, quote, a significant increase in old age pensions, end of quote. Not moderate increases, not modest increases, not affordable increase, but a significant increase in Oldie's pension. Amazingly, in his speech, Granger backpedals once again and changes his tune from the manifesto promise from a significant increase to now what is being offered as a moderate increase. The President also makes bold statement that, quote, the people who are paid only the national minimum wage will not be required to pay income tax, end of quote. Apparently totally oblivious to the fact that the PVPC achieved this for the Guyanese people several years ago. And the list goes on. For example, the President's speech totally ignores the issue of appointing the Public Procurement Commission, when his coalition promised that they would, quote, establish the Public Procurement Commission within the first 100 days. But then again, why would they appoint the commission when they are busy rewarding their friends and supporters by single sourcing, something they said they would never do? Persons like Anand Gulsaran and Christopher Ram, lucrative contracts to do forensic audits, while these very persons are disqualified on the grounds of lack of independence. Today, the Guyanese people have not been afforded the courtesy of being told what procurement process was followed to procure the services of Gulsaran and Ram, and how much they are being paid. Suddenly, the promise of the Public Procurement Commission and sole sourcing is gone, as though the coalition has backpedaled on that too. And so the inescapable conclusion is that instead of Guyanese receiving the benefit of a presidential address indicating when the promises made during the campaign would be delivered, they were instead treated to an acrobatic display by Granger's backpedaling and abandoning every single promise made by his own coalition while they were quoting Guyanese for their votes. As it stands, therefore, it appears that nothing they promised will now be delivered, and once again, the Guyanese people have been deceived by the APNU-AFC cabal, previously known as the People's National Congress. The final statement reads as follows. The call by the People's Progressive Party for GCOM's chairman, Steve Stewart-Bally, to demit office before local government elections are held is no flash-in-the-pan reaction to the cheating it suffered at the May 2015 general and regional elections. The party is convinced that had it not been for GCOM's cheating machine, the PVP would have romped home successfully. However, due to the cumulative impact of the many irregularities that transpired on election day, victory for the PVP at the polls was thwarted. There are some who believe that the PVP is delusional and is bent on revving up a campaign reminiscent of the 1960s. There are others who believe that notwithstanding the number and nature of irregularities, the cumulative effect would not have impacted nor influenced any fundamental change in the results of the elections. Still, there are some who believe that since the international observers baptized the elections as free and fair and gave the imprimatur to the results, then that is, as they say, the end of the matter, and they blissfully claim that the elections are behind us and we need to move on. It is precisely for these reasons that the PVP recognizes and at the same time urges the general public to support the party's call for local government elections to be held only after complete overhaul of GCOM's machinery, meaning its staff complement and its modus operandi, the laws governing the conduct of elections, as well as the duties and responsibilities of the returning and deputy returning officers, above all. And above all, GCOM's top brass must experience fundamental personnel changes before local government elections are held. Mr. Raphael Trotman can bleat and mock as much as he wishes the principal position adopted by the PPP. The fact of the matter is that were the coalition to proceed with the holding of local government elections in the absence of these reforms, such a move will only add insult to injury and precipitate the destruction of the basic tenets of consultative and participatory democracy in Guyana. Mr. Trotman can crow as much and as loud as he can about local government elections being held in 2016, now that his rickety coalition has formed the government. The truth is, the PDP never resigned from holding local government elections. On the contrary, it was as a result of agreements reached between the PDPC administration and the then opposition that local government elections were postponed year after year due to the incomplete work of the Joint Task Force and, as a consequence, the absence of key legislation. Above all, it was the eventual admission by GCOM itself that it was unprepared for the holding of local government elections and that it was more advanced in its preparations for general and regional elections that put paid to the holding of local government elections. To deem the PDP's expression of lack of interest in contesting local government elections under the present conditions as, quote unquote, a blessing in disguise is the height of arrogance and flies in the face of the much vaunted claims by the coalition about inclusive governance and local democracy. Thank you.
Now, on the question based on the two statements that were read by the General Secretary. Yes.
Pushpa Balgam in Stavrik News. In relation to the last statement, directly after the election, Mr. Jagdeo had held a press conference and he had held up 7 statement of polls that he said differed from the PPP's version differed from GCOM's. However, since the box-by-box results are now up, if you go and you check the results, it showcases that the statement of polls that he had claimed were PPPs did in fact reflect on all 7 what the results are at the box-by-box. So what do you have to say about the lack of evidence that the PPP has been able to establish to say that these elections were rigged?
Well, I think it's a little too early to jump to conclusions in respect to claims about lack of evidence, precisely because all the evidence, all the data, and all the materials and statements that we have will certainly be reflected in the elections petition that is soon to be presented to the courts. So we shouldn't jump too early to conclusions about lack of evidence until what we see presented vis-a-vis the elections petition in the courts.
I have a follow-up, sorry. How do you then explain that the post keeps getting moved? Because after the post keeps getting moved, because after the elections, you're stating that the figures are inaccurate, and then when I'm calling Mr. Nandalal to check on the election petition, he's saying essentially that sometimes the numbers, other things could go wrong, and it's not just the numbers. But you were using the numbers as the problem. So every single time you're hit with a little bit. Someone just coming in and saying this is not quite accurate, you move the post saying that, well, no, we didn't technically mean that, we meant this now. So that's...
I don't think it's a question of shifting the goalposts. I think it's a question of understanding where we're coming from. This is a very complex issue, and it cannot be explained in the way some journalists, with due respect, would want us to explain it to them. So I would say, again, I want to repeat that let's wait to see what evidence the PDP will present in its elections petition, and then we can draw whatever conclusions we may wish to draw.
Chairman, freelance journalist. Mr. Rohi, you've said that it's too early to make conclusions about the lack of evidence, yet the PPP continues to criticize GCOM and call for the removal of certain employees. In light of based on what you're saying, this lack of evidence, is it not then best wait on the results of the elections petition in the court before the PPP makes determinative statements for example, referring to government as the de facto government and calling for resignation, since what the PP is making are unlegally substantiated claims?
No, there's no contradiction between the two. We are calling for Sir Bali's resignation. That's a political demand.
Based on what?
Just a minute. You give me a hearing, you give me a hearing. That is a political demand by the PPP. You recall that we have made several statements arising out of meetings with Mr. Surbali, where he promised the president, the then president, that he would recount the 22 boxes when we made representation to him on that day, and several other promises he made which he never did fulfill. It is on the basis of those promises made to us at meetings. It was on the basis of promises made to the PPP that GCOM would not employ persons as polling day staff who had worked before as agents of the PNC, and other agreement that was made by Source Body, meetings of the commission. It is based on those broken promises that we are demanding the resignation of Mr. Source Body. Now, those instances or those examples will probably be further buttressed. That is to say, the demand for Source Body's resignation will be further buttressed when we present the evidence in the court vis-a-vis the elections petition. But there's no contradiction between the call for the resignation of Source Body and the not yet presented petition to the courts.
Adam Harris, Prime Minister. Sir, the issue of the Public Procurement Commission,
yes,
according to the law, there is need of a 2/3 majority before this commission could be established. You, however, are saying that Granger is not pursuing it in the 100 days when the PPP isn't there to ensure a 2/3 majority. Is your criticism therefore considered fair?
Of course it's considered fair. I think just as you, Mr. Adam Harris, the editor of the Cartoon News, is aware of what is required for the Procurement Commission to be established, the sitting president must be aware of what is required as well. It is not the PDP that made the promise of the immediate establishment of the Public Procurement Commission. It is they that made that declaration in their statement. And more than that, the fact of the matter is, as we are arguing, how can you speak so proudly about your intention to establish a Public Procurement Commission when the services of persons are being procured to carry out audits of government agencies and departments without it going through the procurement process, the established procurement process? I recall one of the coalition high priests stating that the days for sole sourcing is over. Yet for us, we see sole sourcing taking place. Was there a public tender? Was there a bidding process? Was it advertised? It wasn't. And this is what Kaito News, Starbuck News, and I News used to criticize the PPPC government about, that we were doing things without going through the established legal process. Here it is now before our very eyes. 2 persons have been procured to carry out these audits. And nobody knows what was the process that was gone through for the services to be hired and what they're being paid. Country should be asking those questions the same way they used to ask questions of the PPPC when it was in office, but we are not going to do that.
Oh, yeah. Another question, if nobody else is
Well,
right.
if you could follow up on the first question you asked, in your statement, sir, you had said
You
that
following up on Adam Harris's question?
yeah, you had said that that it seems that the government is moving
I
away.
thought it was the original questioner
We're all in the press, so that's not a problem.
Listen to me.
And don't know who follows.
Hold on a minute. I have been around for quite a long time at press conferences, listening to press conferences, where outstanding journalists such as Ricky Singh, Rick Mendes, Rick Mendes, and all these people, Kit Nascimento, would host press conferences, and it is the original questionnaire that would follow up on his or her question. For another journalist to piggyback on a question asked by somebody else seems to me a little, untoward.
Okay.
He could get away with it.
Yes. No, I'm okay with it.
But he didn't say so.
Well,
But he's saying that now, sir. He's saying
Say
that
so.
now.
But I'm sure you would agree with me.
Not necessarily. We are fast
But anyway, we'll debate that at another place.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. You have said that it seems that Mr. Grinch is moving away from his promise to deliver the Public Procurement Commission. When Mr. Adams asked you to explain PUP's non-participation as a result of the current executive's inability to deliver, you discussed the
Inability to deliver what?
Public Procurement Commission.
My statement is twofold. The coalition was the group that promised that they will bring the Public Procurement Commission into reality immediately in the first 100 days. That's the first point. The second point is, in the absence of the Procurement Commission, because I thought I saw somewhere that they're going to dismiss the whole commission. In the absence of a commission, you are granting permission, waiving all the procedures for people, for at least speaking about these two individuals, to for the services to be hired. But it is obviously contradictory.
No, sir, you're stretching the point.
All right.
Nobody has ever.
My view is that is contradictory. Don't let us get into the debate. The question was asked, the answer was given. Let's move on.
Just for clarity, sir, are you saying then that if the coalition promised to deliver on the commission, but the opposition is needed to play that role in ensuring that that happens, if the opposition is not participating and the coalition made that promise, then it's not the opposition's fault that they cannot deliver on it, whether they participate or not?
That's not my issue. That's not the issue I'm raising.
Just seeking some clarity.
No, that's not the issue I'm raising. I'm raising an issue where services of two individuals have been procured. There's a mystery about the conditions under which those services were procured, how much it costs, and it flies in the face of talk about no more sole sourcing. That is something of the past. It will not happen again, and yet we see that. That's my position.
We never tendered for any commission anyhow. You got the Rodney Commission, was that tendered for? We had, you name the commissions. The commissions aren't tendered for. You're stretching the point, Chief.
Mr. Adam Harris, you're talking about two different things.
No. All right.
Yes, commissions are part of the Constitution. The president is presidential prerogative with respect to the establishment of commissions. This Public Procurement Commission, it's not the president alone has the prerogative to establish it. There's procedure, but I'm not debating that. I am debating where, in the absence of the commission, sole sourcing is taking place, and individuals who are friends, who used to attack Anand Gulsara and Christopher Ram, who are known supporters of the now government, have been granted these services. That's the point I make. You seem to be missing that point. Let's move on. Yeah.
Gordon, mostly news source. Mr. Rohi, sir, could you say whether or not the party has any plans to go into the National Assembly during the first 100 days for this new government? And secondly, could you update us on your search for an opposition leader?
Yeah, we do have plans to go into Parliament, but I can't say with certainty that it will be within the 100 days of the, with the government has set itself to fulfill a number of things. We have our agenda, they have theirs. So our two agendas might not necessarily coincide.
The opposition leader's position, there were some reports that surfaced late last week that Mr. Jagdeo has received the support of the party in taking up that position. Could you confirm that?
My position would be, let us wait until we get into Parliament and then we will see what will happen.
Has he indicated he's willing to serve in the
Let
Parliament?
us wait until we go to Parliament and then we will see who stands where.
And Ms. Harper, again, could you update us on her position with the party right now? Is she being considered for a member of
I'm
parliament
in
position?
regular contact with Mrs. Harper, and I think the other leads are in regular contact with her.
But is she one of the names that will most likely go into Parliament?
I can't say for certain on that one. As I said before, what we will reveal is a total package.
Mr. Rohi, just clarification, sorry. Was there a meeting of the executive last Friday in relation to the leadership?
I would suggest that you need to continue with what you're seeking to find out.
Well,
What is it you're seeking to find
I
out?
want to know if there was a meeting on Friday and if there was a vote.
Well, if the question stopped there, I will only answer the question if it stopped there.
Yes, it does.
If it doesn't stop there,
It stops there.
then you need to come.
I promise I won't have a follow-up to that.
The question stops there.
The question stops there.
No, that committee didn't meet on that day.
And what's your report?
That committee did not meet on that day. There was no vote. That information is misplaced.
Sir, I want to take it.
Yes, you. The last time we asked about the party going to local government elections, if Mr. Sweet Valley remains, and now you're calling for the overhaul of the agency. Is the party going to go ahead with local government elections if this overhaul is not done?
I think when we come to that review process.
Okay, Ms.
Is
Reedy.
there any discussion about whether you're currently discussing whether you should go ahead?
No.
I assume?
We're focusing on other priorities right now. That's not a priority right now.
But is the party bluffing, sir, with this whole Storage Valley setup? Because you would have won, the party would have won, 7 regions in the just concluded elections. So clearly you have a hold on local government, and a lot of the communities, the smaller communities, you appear to be doing well. So are you bluffing that you're going to these elections that you will do well because Storage Valley is there? Is it a bluff?
It's not as straightforward. Well, if it is a bluff, why don't someone call our bluff? And then we see.
Would you like the president to call that bluff?
Anybody let them call the bluff and then we'll see.
Sir, I want to take you down a quick road. The 1992 elections, there was a lot of confusion against the polls. You talk about GCOM rigging this time around. There were incidents where the lists
You say
were...
there was a lot of confusion, what?
In 92. And there was a lot of confusion around. People's names were on lists placed outside of the polling station, but when they went into the polling station, their names were not on those lists. As a result, 15,000 people in Georgetown were disenfranchised, and you had them voting on Crow Street, tendered ballots, no count. But the elections went ahead, and there was no claim that GCOM rigged. This time, without any evidence of the kind of which I spoke with, your name on the list, and when you go into the polling place, they tell you your name in there. In short, you printed multiple lists. Clear evidence that GCOM screwed up. Yet nobody talked about GCOM rigging. Why are you talking about GCOM rigging when you yourself, as a party, benefited from a GCOM screw up in 92?
I don't know about that. I was there in 92. I know nothing of that, what you're talking about.
About the tendered ballots on Kroll Street, about the people being so angry that Parliamentary had to come out and pacify them, tell them to go home. They insisted on voting and they didn't know they were presenting tendered ballots. Fleming Jones, the ambassador walking in and out.
What's the point you're making?
The point I am making is GCOM screwed up big time in '92, but there was no accusation of GCOM rigging. Here, without any visible or tangible evidence, you are accusing GCOM of rigging.
My friend, as I told you and your colleague reporter earlier, it's a little too early for us to talk about lack of evidence or not a shred of evidence.
No tangible evidence.
Or tangible evidence, whatever the term may be. The fact of the matter is we have a petition and we have to present evidence in that petition. In addition to that, we have to have witnesses come forward as well. All of that is in the making. So, you know, let us wait and see what will happen.
And Sir Valley never had any vote of no confidence against him demanding his resignation. You had one and you ignored it. Carol Suba had two and she ignored them. Why the insistence? Why this push against Sir Valley?
I had one from who?
The Parliament voted, gave you a vote of no confidence calling for your resignation and you ignored it.
There's the opposition PNC.
The same opposition now calling for Sir Valley. Does he have a right to ignore you
No, but
then?
listen to me. I saw that in them voices.
Good.
What I noticed you, this is the second time you're bringing them by this photo. But it doesn't really matter.
He's the same person doing it anyhow, isn't he?
Yes, it doesn't really matter. The point I want to make is this, that the vote of no confidence in the National Assembly, which was initiated by Mr. Granger himself, had to do with the allegation of a shooting at Linden, which I was exonerated by the Commission. Granger himself stood up in the Parliament that day and said he doesn't have to wait on any outcome or the results of the Commission. He is saying what his views are on this thing, on that incident, and he rallied his MPs to follow suit. That's the history behind that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The vote of the no confidence issue right now has to do with a whole host of irregularities which we have compiled and which we will present as evidence to show why we feel the results of the elections should have been much different from what it is now.
Mr. Ray, there are several bills that has been stated to be laid in the National Assembly for the
What?
Several bills
Uh-huh.
that are to be laid in the National Assembly for passage in the coming sittings. Several of these bills, the PUP, when it was the past administration, indicated their contention with these bills, some of them being unconstitutional and what's not. However, the president had refused. The president had refused to assent to several of these bills, citing their unconstitutionality. What I'm asking is that does the PUP plan to go to the National Assembly to debate and voice their opposition to these bills, noting that the government can pass them without the opposition support? And finally, does the PUP owe NCN any outstanding funds for ads during elections time, and if so, how much?
I saw Demerara Waves wrote a very extensive article saying something about a lot of matters are unsettled in the PPP. And I think it was Chabal picked pieces from here and there. You know, it was kind of a cut and paste story about the People's Progressive Party. I didn't give much credence to it because I thought Dennis could have done a better job in understanding, because the moment you began to quote from sources inside the PPP, your credibility would, go on. And that is precisely what he was attempting to do. Quote sources in the PPP. I can't say again for certain when is it we will go to the National Assembly with our MPs, whether during the first 100 days, whether it will be to debate those matters. I know for certain we're not going on Thursday to debate the President's throne speech. So, there's nothing certain on that. issue.
The final question, sir.
Yeah.
Is the PPP indebted to NCN for advertising during the campaign season? And if so, how much? The NCN. Does PPP owe NCN for advertising during the campaign season?
We have sums outstanding for quite a number of persons. And those outstanding sums will be paid shortly.
How much are they?
Was that?
How much outstanding?
No, I can't disclose that.
Can you confirm that NCN is one of the persons you have outstanding firms for?
I can't see. I don't really deal with those matters.
But you received
But you're the General Secretary, sir.
Chief, hello. The General Secretary has his work cut out for him. There is the accounts section of the People's Progressive Party, the research section of the People's Progressive Party. All of these departments in the party have their work cut out for them. Unless something untoward develops that is of a political nature, it is brought to the General Secretary's attention. Otherwise, these things are routinely dealt with by the professional staff in the various departments.
Who would head the accounts department?
That's an internal matter. I can't just do it.
So, sir, you would have received a letter last week, Monday, from NCN indicating to you sort of a reminder of this sum owed.
You know that I received a letter.
Yeah.
You know that statement reminds me when
You
I
opened the letter right there after the press conference when it was briefing on
No,
plans.
that statement has nothing to do with it.
You
Your
opened the letter there.
No, your thing reminds me of when I was at the Ministry of Home Affairs. People tell me that they know I have a letter pertaining to X or Y matter on my desk. They know that the letter is on my desk. But there's only two people who would know what is on my desk. The Minister and his confidential secretary.
And she used to talk.
You opened the letter right there.
I
We were
know, I'm
talking
not so
last
sure that was
week.
the letter.
Yes, 30.3 million, eyes right.
Well, whatever it is, the accounts department
It's taking care of
in the party is dealing with that matter.
Is the party in a position right now, seriously though, can the party afford these bills that are now coming in? 13.
You can afford. You have to pay them. It's due to people to be paid.
Well, I'm asking that, sir. There was an issue that was raised just during the elections or just after the elections where GWI was billed by an advertiser, a company that makes the billboards, for billboards that were in fact made for the PPP. So that's what I'm trying to find out. If
No, I don't know anything about those matters. I know about matters that are of relevance to the People's Progressive Party and that is being dealt with by certain divisions or departments inside the party.
Any thoughts on the issue with one of your members, Ms. Jennifer Westford, and the alleged transfer or attempt to transfer at least 8 government vehicles to herself, her spouse, and at least 2 or 3 friends?
Yes, we had, I met with the comrade and we had some discussions and she was advised on a course of action to take. I believe she's following a course of action.
Are you surprised by, because you would have seen the evidence in the newspapers, the receipts, the letters between Hyder Ali, who was also involved in the party?
You tempted me to give you a headliner named "Will He Surprised" by this disclosure.
Sir, you're not.
No, are you surprised though? Based on your meeting with the comrade, is the party going to take a position based on the evidence?
Well, I just said we met with the comrade and we discussed the matter with her. She was advising a particular course of action, and I am verily believe that she is following that course of action.
To turn back into all the vehicles.
Whatever the course of action she's taking, well, that's it.
Freedom of Association, sir. You said that you petitioned GCOM not to employ agents who served with the PNC or who worked with the PNC in previous elections, at least in 2011 elections, to work on these elections.
We were assured by Sir Bali that he wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Last week you sat here and you justified the right of people who are associated with the PPP, who worked with the PPP as opposed to government, being retained by the administration based on the constitutional right of association, freedom of all kind of freedoms you give me. So why you selectively decide when the constitution should apply to people's rights?
You know, your rationalization sometimes amazes me.
I know, it has amazed me too.
What I said in this matter is that the GCOM chairman assured the PPP and by extension the commission that persons of that caliber and that political state would not be employed as polling day staff because GCOM is expected to be an independent body. So that when you walk into a place and you see persons who you know worked before as PNC polling agents, working now as DRE, or working now as deputy returning officers, and so forth. To come back to our friend's question whether we would be surprised. In that case, yes, we would be surprised.
They change party affiliation by then.
No, man, these things don't happen like that in Guyana. Guyana is a peculiar country.
John Bryan, Culture News. With NCM being a state agency and your party no longer being a part of the state machinery, don't you think it's the ethical or responsible thing to do to provide more clarity in terms of unfinished financial business?
To provide more clarity on what?
On unfinished financial matters.
No, what I said, we are obligated to fulfilling our outstanding payments to whoever.
But providing clarity to the general public.
Well, what is the definition of clarity? What clarity by definition? Meaning what?
On how much it's owed.
We don't think we necessarily to get into that. They are free to say that, but we are not going to say that. That's our business. That's our internal business. If I owe somebody $40, I don't have to walk about the office and say I owe such and such a person $40. The main thing is that you're committed to fulfilling your obligation, and you fulfill them in an honorable manner. And that's the end of the story. Well, you don't have to walk about advertising these things to people just because somebody wants some publicity, news story.
Jim Paul and News. Mr. Rohi, how soon can you expect people to pay NCM these monies?
What?
How soon?
You know, journalists usually ask this question: how, when, where, and why. Politicians don't normally get themselves into that journalistic, framework to answer questions of how soon and so forth. We will pay.
Sir,
That the General Secretary of the party stating that we will pay.
Sir, did former President Barra Jagdeo discuss today's court appearance with you or with the party? He's supposed to be in court today. Was that a topic for discussion today?
What do you mean by discuss?
Talk to you about it?
Post-election.
Yeah. Plan support, perhaps arrange with the party to protest.
Mr. Jagdeo informed me that
Yes.
he's going to court this morning.
Yes, sir.
That's all.
He informed you?
Yes.
And did he ask the party help in arranging any protests outside the
No. Jagdeo is not like that.
You don't answer. You don't
That's
answer.
how he's portrayed, but he's not like that.
Has he dashed your hopes of being opposition leader?
Whose hopes?
Your hopes.
If he, that's my hopes. As
The general secretary of the party is a powerful position.
You're asking a tricky question there. I think when we go to Parliament, we will see all things glory before us.
Is the party awaiting the results of Jagdeo's legal matters before stating who has the leadership?
No, we don't have to wait on that. We can't wait on that because we have no influence over the courts, whether they will, rule or whether they will publicly state what the position is. None at all. I remember I said that we have our own agenda. We work on our own agenda.
What is the party looking for in an opposition leader? There are several high-profile leading members of the party, including yourself, who have been around for a number of years. What do you think the ideal opposition leader would need to showcase?
Well, I'm glad that you said that we've been around and not a square. But the point not so much the opposition leader. We're talking about what will be required of the party in the next few months and probably a few years ahead. Which means that we have to go in there as a fighting force. We have to go in there in a very combative way within the confines of the standing orders, articulate, defending the policies, defending the programs of the PPPC administration, exposing the governments in all their shortcomings, and showing the people, letting our supporters know and others who might have an interest in following our modus operandi in Parliament, that we are a force to be reckoned with in Parliament as well as outside of Parliament. Because we committed to Parliament as well as extra-parliamentary struggle. Parliament for us will be a forum for struggle.
And sir, there's a new Speaker of the National Assembly who was sworn in at the first sitting. The party has been relatively silent on the appointment of Mr. Scotland as the new Speaker of the National Assembly. Your thoughts about him being there in that position? He would have worked with the past government dealing with water issues and so. And then he'd also put down the selection or the voting for a deputy speaker until your party comes in, saying the opposition, the government saying that will go to the PPP. Have you identified
the government
anyone?
said that?
Yeah.
The
President.
I don't hear that.
Yeah. Are you going to, have you started looking at possible persons to fill those shoes too?
Well, I know Mr. Scotland quite well, so he's no stranger to me at least. And I think he's not a stranger to many others in the PPP. We'll have to wait and see, how he performs, especially when we are in the Parliament, before we make a judgment call in respect to his performance as the Speaker of the National Assembly. I think it's a little too early for us to pass judgment on that. Although it was Christ and the Bible who said, judge no man. There's a lot of judging going on across the newspaper spectrum. Every day Kaiser News is judging this body. iNews is judging somebody. The Marways is judging somebody.
You're lucky you didn't get in called.
Trial in public. Don't worry, I call his name sometimes too.
That's it.
So, in respect to the Deputy Speaker, we haven't taken any position, but like I said, it's a total package that we're looking at. The question of the MPs, the leader of the opposition, the Deputy Speaker, Chief Whip, all those things we're looking at as a total package. So when we reveal, it will be all things right and beautiful. Lord God made them all.
You said that PPP is a fighting force and that's how you will be heading to Parliament. Is that to say that the party will be more like a brick wall, not really looking to compromise or working in the national interest or whatever?
Why would we want to be like that? Why would we want to be like that? I just said we will be as combative and as forceful as we could in the National Assembly within the meaning of the standing order, within the confines of the standing order.
But you're compromising situations. Because you're asking.
Because
Well,
they
I'm
are
not
calling for
saying-
national unity.